Hold on,
All right, says we're
did I
live.
sign? Okay.
I'm gonna go check our YouTube real quick just to make sure, because this is gonna be awesome. People
I think
watching
it's
us watch ourselves.
watch ourselves and
It's got
see
to be the
what
most
mistakes we
vain thing we
make.
could do. Yeah. Here we go. Where's our channel? Oh, look at that. We are live. There's a bit of a delay, but yeah, it's going.
We are there.
All right. So, um, this is going to be recorded. So, this is our inaugural live stream podcast. We are the guys from on Microsoft who are now doing Microsoft Unboxed, a hopefully weekly podcast where we come on and we talk about Microsoft stuff. Per usual, we're just gonna try and do it ourselves and bring you as much news as we can whenever we can. I am, for those of you who are new, Kareem. I'm always joined by David.
Hi guys, hope everybody's doing well. Good to be here.
Yeah, and we're just gonna get into the news. We'll get to some of the formality stuff later on about why this is a new pod, and check out our website when you can because that's up and running as well. But you guys came for the news. You came for what Microsoft's talking about and what's going on. We know the biggest headline is the Sam Altman OpenAI stuff. We'll get to that in a second. But there was other news this week, surprisingly. What do you want to start off talking about in this free flowing form?
Well, I think we kind of need to back up just a little bit because before we get into the Sam Altman stuff, we do have, Microsoft Ignite that was last week, and that there was a lot of good stuff announced at Ignite. Now, let's, say that it was heavily focused around that term AI and so many things coming out and so many ways to leverage it that even my head was spinning after about 15 or 20 minutes in because, Microsoft threw a lot at us, and I think what I'm going to focus on here is just the stuff that affects us as small business owners and consumers in general. Now, Ignite is a developer based conference. If you are a developer, folks, there's plenty in there to talk, to check out. Um, but the big thing that caught my eye that I would like to talk about are the cloud PCs, number one. Microsoft has been working toward getting everything in the cloud for the past few years, and I think eventually, instead of buying PCs, for those of us that have suitable internet connections, we may very well be accessing Windows and accessing our workflow through the cloud PCs. And what Microsoft has done here is they have took this a step further. You've been able to access cloud PCs for a little while, but the good thing is they've added GPUs to these cloud PCs. They're only available right now in certain areas, in certain markets. They're still doing the testing phase, but you basically have three options here. You have a Windows 365 Enterprise GPU, you have a 4 vCPU option, an 8 vCPU option, a 16 vCPU option, and those range from 4, 12, 16 gigs of RAM all the way up to 110 gigs, and your storage goes as high as 1 terabyte. So, what you can do is you're starting to see your videographers, your folks running the compute task, maybe even the AI compute tasks that are GPU centric. You can now scoot over and get your cloud PC with a GPU. Now, it is an NVIDIA option. You do have NVIDIA and AMD available. So you kind of get to choose both here. The one thing that I do see is you are limited to the Intel based CPU. Now, how do you access this stuff? That's the kicker. Microsoft has said you have a Windows, let me paraphrase this like they did, a Windows app. That's what they're calling it. And for right now, it's iPad, Mac, and PC. Interestingly enough, there's no mention of an Android option, but if you do some digging, you will see in the videos that clearly there's an Android phone being used. So maybe the Android version is not ready yet. Maybe it's coming in the future. I can't foresee them, leaving the Android users out. But it's very interesting that Microsoft has now put GPUs in the cloud. It's just the next step of moving more workflows off of the desktop, I think.
Yeah. I don't have much to say about the GPUs in the cloud. I did want to throw a line out to the Microsoft app. That was one of the headlines I wanted to cover. And that I think is probably one of the things that have reasonably gone under the radar for most consumers, but may have been the biggest news out of that entire event. We talk about, in a little bit later, we'll talk about chips that you're working with, Nvidia to do stuff. They're building their own things. That was big news. The Copilot in Azure, that was big news. But the
Mhm.
fact that Microsoft has now figured out Windows app to put Windows on, like you said, iOS, to put it on Mac OS, to put it on eventually, we presume, Android. This is huge. This is kind of what I think most Windows journalists and insiders have been talking about for years now. And this is, I believe, the epitome of Microsoft saying, okay, you know, the world doesn't need to revolve around Wintel specifically. Like, you don't need to buy a Windows device in order to use Windows. We're going to just give it to you, essentially, or give you access to it everywhere. So imagine if you were someone who was, we see all these videos on YouTube about everyone like saying, oh, I've just switched from Windows to Mac after 35 years of usage, and it's a breath of fresh air, whatever. And they talk about how long they've been on these devices because of specific Windows applications. Now you can go out and Microsoft still gets, I'm presuming, some type of licensing fee if you go buy an M2, M3, future MacBook and still need to access your boss is saying, hey, you can go out buy your own device by yourself with your own Mac, have at it. The world is your oyster, but you still need to use this Windows app, and you still, instead of using Parallels or some other form of of you know
Virtualization,
Macintosh, yeah, virtually, you get this. This is a win for Microsoft in a very big way. I don't
big
I don't know
win.
how you feel about it.
It's going to boil down to software as a service, and I think that's where Microsoft makes its money. That's what their Azure Cloud is. That's what the Xbox is. The Xbox console is just the hardware that you must have to drive the software. That's what cloud gaming is, and I think consumers are going to like it. I think businesses are going to like it as long as they keep it affordable to where like you said, the consumer can pick what device they want. The administrators don't have to worry about security. All they have to do is control the cloud instance. The administrators at that point know for sure that they have 100% control of that infrastructure. There's no leaks between the personal PC and the office, and there's no VPNs to have to worry about. There's no logins other than what it takes to log into your cloud PC. There's no workarounds. You turn your device on, you access this Windows app that they refer to, and you connect to your cloud PC. Now, I will throw one thing in there that I forgot to mention. The Windows app works with all Microsoft services, whether you've got the Cloud PC, Azure, and any of the other login services that Microsoft has in the cloud. So it's an all in one app which I think is big for developers, folks that do server admin to be able to access anything in the Microsoft cloud through this app. I think,
Yeah,
like you
that's
said, the app's a game changer.
yeah, and it's interesting that, and this is commercial, so I don't expect to see ads during the Super Bowl about this particular thing, but I think I always liken Microsoft's uh, trickle down effect to like how we get technology from the military. Like, we weaponize it
Mm.
first. It becomes very special, focused, hyper focused, and specialized. Then eventually it becomes consumer, commercialized enough to be a consumer product that we eventually, use in every day. And I feel like this is what's going to happen with this enterprise thing. We're gonna, they're going to be using it for, you know, 3 to 5 more years without any Microsoft marketing or mainstreaming it in any way. But at some point, it will become the thing that they say, like, keep your devices a little bit longer, keep the longevity of your device, the resources, so to speak. These thin clients, you might be manufacturers might be able to just throw in some Qualcomm modems, and let you kind of run around with this device on the fly. Doesn't require a lot of battery. It's not using a lot of CPU overhead, so to speak, because everything's in the GPU. You pay for this subscription, and you're basically subscribing to the GPUs and CPUs in the cloud more than you are the operating system itself, getting access to those things. And the operating system is just, again, it's just a nice add-on, a link to all the other services Microsoft provides. It's a window into that. And again, I see it as the next phase for Windows as we come upon this whole cloud, Microsoft being the cloud, Microsoft being AI. Windows is now third string, maybe even fourth behind Office and all the other stuff, but still a way to keep the cohesion together.
And I don't think it's coincidence that just, well, a month ago now, roughly, we had the big Snapdragon conference, and Snapdragon came out with these highly powerful, highly efficient ARM based CPUs, and you had HP, Dell, and all the popular OEMs ready to snatch them up, and went ahead and made the statement that you will see PCs running these chips next year. So that plays into the, some of them are going to have a modem. We know that. They're going to have the 5G service, and like you talked about, we know already based on some of the reviews that you and I have done that those ARM CPUs in their current form already sip battery life compared to Intel and AMD both. So when you've got something that sips battery life, and I'm going to use an old term, and you old school folks will understand what I'm about to say, you're basically carrying around a thin client. And I know back in the day, people remember, if you're old enough and you worked in Novell or anything like that, or Windows Terminal services for Windows NT, you know what I mean by thin client. You're basically carrying around a mobile thin client with a modem attached with some awesome battery life. You throw in a decent keyboard with that and a decent screen, so it's pleasant to use and it's user friendly. A little bit of comfort, if you will. And I think this is where we go from here. And I think, like you said, it starts in business, then the college students will get a hold of it. Then it may trickle down to your middle school and elementary schools, giving students a device just to carry around. And then, during that time, the consumers pick it up. And you want to edit video, you log into your cloud PC with your GPU. They make it happen. So for some people, this may end up being cheaper than buying a PC, depending on how it's priced by the time it gets to the bottom end consumer on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, I mean that is the idea, right? Well, I'm
Well,
going to jump into. Go ahead. No, before you go.
we'll also have to think about those that we have talked about in the past that don't have suitable broadband for this type of thing. So I'm hoping that, like you said, 4 or 5 years maybe before it becomes a regular everyday consumer product, maybe the broadband carriers out there have better saturated some of the areas that are underserved, and this is less of an issue.
That's the idea. Again, this isn't going to be something where you go buy a PC in January and you have access to this on your Mac or something. This is it's going to be a long haul, but this is one of the biggest, I think, news things to come out if Microsoft stays steady and kind of goes where we're thinking they're going. This cloud-based version of Windows. I do wonder how this affects the partners, though. Like, how does licensing still work at this point for them and their devices? They make money on the razor thin margins of producing, ThinkPads every 30 seconds. If you don't need one, if you don't need the most up to date one every 2 to 3 years, you can start to use this cloud based version of Windows. Where does that leave them in the lurch? I don't know.
It may lead them in a lawsuit somewhere in the end. You
I would
know,
like to think that they thought about this before. Like they have lawyers, they have some pretty decent ones. Someone's had to have been in the room and be like, "Hey, 5 years from now, when this is a thing, where are we as far as liability is concerned? Are the licenses are they done yearly? Are they done in bundles? Does are these does do manufacturers jump to Linux finally? Will it finally be the year of Linux?
or let me throw one more thing out there. We are making where we when I say we, maybe all of us are making an assumption that Microsoft will be in full control of this. We could get to the point now. This would also make Microsoft money. It could make Google money. It could make Amazon money as well. It may be where Microsoft introduces the cloud PC. We do it the Microsoft way. Then Lenovo says, here's our cloud PCs. You do it our way. Dell says, here's ours. You do it our way. And you choose what configuration and what bundling options work for you, because I can't see that Microsoft will cover every possible configuration option and may have no desire to, because there's still got to be relationships to build the back end of this cloud. So Microsoft may say, look, we're going to take these and let's just use our friends at Lenovo, for example. They may say, okay, Microsoft, you build the Intel cloud for the Intel folks that want it. We're going to build the AMD cloud for the AMD folks that want it. And we
Okay.
will buy our licensing from you for our cloud. So, who knows how to play out, but that could be an option for the OEMs to kind of stay in the ball game without having to see their money go away.
I mean, yeah, like I said, we hope that they figure this out. I don't think they're going to run headfirst into a lawsuit. But then again, this is also the company that owes the IRS how many billions?
I forget how many that was, but quite a few.
I want to say it's like 21, 22 billion or something like that in back taxes. So allegedly. So again,
Hey,
we can't assume everything.
it's 1/3 of an Activision.
Exactly. Maybe they'll just sell off the King version that they wanted, or Blizzard or whatever, and say, all right, take Blizzard and we'll keep everything else. Moving on to other news, other big news, which is Copilot coming to Windows 10. This news is also big, and big for
Mhm.
a different reason because this is a big signifier I think things to come. And I was listening to our buddies over at Windows Central and their podcast I think they had last week, and they bring up a few good things. But I'm gonna kind of just go over just the highlights of what's actually happening. Copilot is coming to Windows 10. I believe it's available for insiders as of this week. I want to say they started rolling it out Monday. So if you're a Windows 10 and you're still an insider, you could actually get access to it. It'll be coming as an update with a dedicated Copilot button, just like those of us on Windows 11 have. It's interesting because I believe the button on the Windows 10 version is going to be located in the Action Center, which is the
Mhm.
pane to the left of or the area dedicated to the left of your screen where all of your notifications kind of come up and stuff, which makes it ideal for those who are going to use that thing because that is where Copilot kind of props up. So for those of us who are Windows 11, when you click, uh, what do you call it? The Copilot button now, which is centered if you're using the center taskbar, or to the left align if you're using the old version, it shows up on the opposite side of the screen, which again makes no real UI sense. So maybe they're going to unify this and move the Windows 11 version over to the Action Center, which I think is where it should have been to begin with. But that'd be that version. The feature will be available for testing in the release preview. So again, if you are in the insiders, stay away from dev, stay away from beta. Go to the release preview, and you should be able to get it today and try it out. Microsoft is also, and we had a chance. Those of us who are in the press got a chance to sit down with them and talk about this beforehand. Uh, they're revisiting their approach to the way that they're going to be doing Windows 10 updates. And like I said, I had mentioned the guys from Windows Central. Check out their podcast. Their theory is that because of Panos Panay leaving, Microsoft is pivoting sort of back to their old ways of updating things, older things, much longer. Not to say that this is all of Panos's, you know, uh, pejorative, but prerogative is to move forward. I think he wanted to say, hey, we're gonna focus on Windows 11, make it nicer, make it newer, and end of life for Windows 11 is end of life. And I believe now that he's gone, some people in the organization are saying, hey, why does Windows 10 have to be the end of life for this, especially if these are AI software features? We can start porting this stuff back because we need the users. We need all of the people. We need the whole pile, not section them off and trying to force people into newer versions of Windows, which again, I think Panos wanted to do, which, and again, to his credit, is what they needed to do. What are your thoughts on this?
One, I agree with everything you said, and I think it's important to understand that everybody right now is AI everywhere. We want to get this in front of just as many people as we can. And what was the number so I don't misquote? It was 400 something. Was it 400 billion people were using Windows 12?
There were 400 million people using Windows 11, and I believe
Four or
at its
Windows
height,
11. So I'm
Windows.
sorry.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, if you know something I don't, let us. I think you're breaking news on air. Embargoes, embargoes, embargoes. Uh, no, and I think at its height there were 500 million using Windows 10. This is about 5 years ago, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago. So, I mean, if we're to believe that there's any kind of semblance between the two, that could be a potential 600 million users between the two. If people have shifted over from Windows 10 to Windows 11 and they share the same user base, we know this site growing very much more. But there's at least a potential of 500 million people using one of the two operating systems. And if you start to kind of cut that down, you could have potentially lost 100 million people from Windows 10, and that's a lot of people. For
It is.
Windows Copilot, yeah, and for Windows Copilot to work, it needs everyone to use it to make it better.
And let's be real about something. The Copilot that we see is nothing but a glorified web browser pop-up. That's what I want. That's how I want to say that. It's not like we're having to plug something into Windows 10 and make it work. We are installing a button to manage and manipulate an existing browser window. So we're not rewriting APIs and doing all that kind of thing like, hey, we're putting AI into Windows 10. Look at us. You know, we don't have AI built into Windows 11 yet. That's kind of what we're hoping that Windows 12 is. Maybe there's some sort of deeper integration there, but for right now on both platforms, it's a glorified web browser pop-up. So why not put it on Windows 10 would be my question. I mean, essentially you're putting a button in the Action Center, you click the button, you get the pop-up. Now, I did see that there was some known bugs in the pop-up that it does not work with dual monitors on Windows 10 and only works on the primary, so keep that in mind. Don't let that confuse you. I believe that's the same way with Windows 11 as well, though. And it does not work if you put your taskbar in the vertical position. It only works in the horizontal position only. And there was some issues with typing in the text box and the input that you're putting in the box not totally being accepted. Microsoft said that the workaround to that was to refresh the Copilot window, and that takes care of that. So I haven't used it on Windows 10 yet. I'll be honest, I do not have a Windows 10 device around, but I'll see if I can dig one up and see what it looks like.
Yeah, and to your point, Microsoft says it'll functionally Windows 10 version will functionally be similar to Windows 11, but it will not be identical. While a lot of the plugins will be compatible between the two operating systems, there will be some specific plugins just for Windows 11, and there is a minimum spec requirement, I believe, of 4 GB. So if you somehow found a 2 GB Windows 10 device, consider yourself lucky. Sell it on eBay to go get yourself a 4 GB device. You could try this out. But
Hmm.
I believe it's 4 GB of memory minimum in order to run this. Like I said, I think even Microsoft doesn't sell anything lower than 4. So if you have any old Surface devices and even the new stuff that, the cheaper versions like the Surface Laptop Go at 4 GB, I believe 2 years ago, they should all be able to run Copilot just fine. And again, that's barring that it comes out of preview polished. So as my co-host just said, it's in preview. There are going to be bugs. There are going to be things that break. It is roughly a glorified web browser, but the promise is, and I believe Microsoft showed this off in April of this year, that Copilot is intended to be an on-device assistant more so than a modified search engine. So again, you'll still be able to do all of the normal stuff of write me a recipe for a, Thanksgiving dinner. I want a 4-course Thanksgiving dinner meal. Can you give me out ideas plus recipes and images to kind of work with? You can still do that in this version of it, but the promise was that you'll be able to essentially set timers on your device. So if you have like a Surface Pro or something like that, you're setting up in the kitchen to start cooking, it'll be able to open up itself. It'll be able to open up videos, to be able to access files on your device. It'll be able to kind of do what Bixby was supposed to be doing for the Galaxy devices, kind of turning on and off things on device. And it's again, I think these are what these NPUs that Microsoft is kind of going to be pushing for Windows 12 are going to be able to do. The same way that I think Apple has its NPUs for specific things that are done on the phone's device to make it faster. Because right now, Copilot is sluggishly slow. Like you can do things on your device much faster than asking Copilot to do it. The idea is that these will be baked into chips that will be put into the Windows devices going forward, which unfortunately means they might raise the cost of things for a lot of manufacturers. But the return is that you'll be able to say, hey, I want you to save this file that I just finished writing, put it into a PowerPoint with these highlights, and then take the I don't know the financials from that and put that also in an Excel that I can all package up and send to a client or whatever, and the device will just start doing it. That is the promise. That is what we were kind of shown in April, and we'll see. We eventually get there. And for those who are Windows 10, maybe that'll come back to you guys as well.
I think it will. Because there was one more thing that was kind of ties into this that was mentioned at Microsoft Ignite. Because if you remember, they showed the neat server cabinet with the new, more efficient servers for running AI with the new NVIDIA chips. And I think you're about to talk about the Microsoft, let's call it the Microsoft CPU for the moment. Um, they've got to get it in front of as many people as possible because one, it's got to be paid for, and that's still a model that we're working out. Whether it be some of it is paid via ads, whether there's a fee for it, whether it's a part of your 365. So before Microsoft says, look, you've got to pay this and it's a part of your 365 membership for an extra $2.99 a month or whatever they choose it to be, they want everybody to see it. They want everybody to taste it. It's kind of like going to Sam's Wholesale and you go down the aisle there and they've got the free sample on the left. Microsoft wants everybody to get that free AI sample because at any point in time here within the next couple of years, we're all going to be putting out a few greenbacks for that AI capability. I think whether you're consumer or business, it's going to be baked in somewhere because it's expensive to operate.
Yeah, speaking of expensive, as you mentioned, Microsoft is getting into the chip game. And I say expensive because this is something I believe that other companies have already done. This isn't new as far as creating cloud server chips. I believe AWS has already been doing this for about 8 years now. Google's probably been doing it for about seven or so. But Microsoft's finally got into the game. They're going to start building their own ARM processors for AI and computing workloads. I believe the two processors are called the Cobalt 100 and the Maya, MAIA, uh, AI accelerator. So there's a lot of A's and I's in this, but those are the two chips that will be powering Microsoft's cloud. The something that I believe they partnered with OpenAI to do. And this will basically be OpenAI on a chip, specific to OpenAI APIs and workloads. So anybody who wants to necessarily uh, use the cloud version of these kind of things or use it to do server based computations or whatnot, you'll be able to get it with this chip. Microsoft unveiled the two custom designed processors for Azure server farms, optimized for AI and computer workloads. The new AI chips, like I said, are called Cobalt 100 CPU, which is again the dedicated AI processor. And then oh, and I apologize. It's not the Maya AI accelerator is the official name for it, uh, or I guess the dub name for it, the project name for it. The other one is called, let me make sure I get this right. I don't remember what the other one's called, but there is a secondary one that'll be also being used as well, and that won't be for OpenAI specifically. It'll be for other cloud-based computations or whatnot. Um, so, what do you think about Microsoft making server chips? Now, when the announcement first came out, I was like, oh, they finally are going to make that much better version of the Qualcomm X chip or whatever. But this is going into servers, so as a little bit subdued.
Well, it kind of plays into the big news of this week, which we're slowly inching our way to. Microsoft has bought into AI completely, and the more efficient you can process that AI, the faster you can do it, the better. And you can't continue to buy GPUs to do it. I'm sure Nvidia would love to supply them, but there is a limited capacity of GPU capabilities before it becomes just completely impractical to do the amount of power required, the amount of, waste, that would be required, and Microsoft wants to keep things as eco-friendly as possible. So I feel like these chips are the first step of saying this. We kind of went through a phase of where we had to figure out we had one person on the internet. We had to figure out how to get 10 people on the internet. We had to figure out how to get 1,000 people on the internet. And once we did that, we figured out how to ramp it up and scale. And I think Microsoft has got to say, hey, this is the efficient way of how we're going to handle AI. Those chips will get smaller over time. Those chips will get more efficient. Those chips will get faster. Think of it as the PC world restarting in terms of AI. When we first got PCs, they were big, they were bulky, they were hot, they were not efficient. It's kind of where we are. Now, Microsoft has said, hey, for AI, this is our first shot at being fast, efficient, and it's going to be a game changer, I think, because unless they've got something up their sleeve, we haven't heard from Google that they've got a chip that's going to do this. We haven't heard from Amazon that they've got a chip that's going to do this. I think, Microsoft is on to something because how many of these do they have? That might be the kicker, but they did show us the complete infrastructure supposedly in the cabinet there that they had on stage because they showed how it was cooled, how everything still fits into a 19-inch rack form factor without having to retrofit your data centers. So, can you imagine if these things become co-located in the data center and other companies now have access to them? I think this is just a sign of big things to come. And
Now,
we're just on the cusp of what Microsoft is going to do.
here's the question: where does this leave them with Nvidia? I think you and I kind of talked a little bit off mic about how this could play out because again, Nvidia has been, I don't know how much they've added a few billion to their uh, net value by being the company that's going to be providing chips for AI. And it's presumed that Nvidia came on stage and talked during Ignite, so they're still
Ignite.
friendly. They don't. I don't know if they necessarily see this as competition.
Oh, that
Uh,
that they were warm and cozy, but and you could certainly see the coffee cups and the smiles between them. But I think they're going to maybe not always be. They're going to have to agree to be competitors on some level
yeah,
because you know there will be something that will compete. There will be something that will compete with Microsoft's chip other than Nvidia. AMD, I'm sure, and Intel saw that announcement and they sent mad scientists to the drawing board. Okay, look what Microsoft's done. Send the mad scientists to the room and let's lock them in until they give no food, no water. We got to have those chips, boys. Um, so there's going to be other AI chips out there. Let's use that term. There's going to be plenty of other AI chips out there. So it's going to be very interesting where this all leads. Do we get to the point where AI chips and PC chips merge in some place other than the MPU? Do we get the Intel I-15 with with AI? That would be the marketing buzz, or the Intel I-16 with AI. And that would be how they would do it. And then you know AMD may say AMD 8000, the smarter CPU. And I think we may start seeing some of these things come together, and there's going to be competition. Intel's got a rack somewhere in the bowels of the Intel research labs. They have a rack somewhere with the first generation AI chips on them by now. I can almost guarantee it.
I mean, technically speaking, I believe the 13th gen comes with its own NPUs now for certain specific things, if I'm not mistaken. Because
I
you can get
think you are
devices that
right.
there are, I believe, yeah, because the Surface, we were introduced to the Surface Laptop Studio 2 that is now able to take advantage of some of the AI features that the Surface Pro 9 got, the ARM version that had dedicated NPU for it. So, we're starting to see these trickle out. I agree with you. As far as servers are concerned, I believe our theory was that Nvidia is actually the biggest winner of this because they still have their orders set. Like those contracts and those orders are in place. Whether or not they can meet that demand is up to them. But now they're able to offload some of that demand for people who use the Microsoft Azure stack. And what they can do is say, Microsoft, uh, we don't necessarily have to build out the chips. Those aren't part of our allocated resources. They're not part of our our assembly line. But uh, we can provide, or you can provide the support systems for those kind of things, and we can do a licensing deal as far as the architecture is concerned. You can make your chips similar to how we make ours, almost identical if you want. You pay us a little bit of money for that, for how to design those, and you take up all of the customer support on that because these are your chips. These are, coming from you.
Hmm.
If the amount that people need specifically for that will be on you, and we'll provide, and say they want to do a mix. Say they'd already started with a contract with us. We'll maintain those. It's a win-win for them because again, they can use Microsoft to license some of their designs because Microsoft's going to need that in order to make it fat, make theirs at scale and make it much faster, more quickly than they're currently doing. So they get it from Microsoft both ways. I think it's going to be a real good business proposition for them, and going forward for anybody else who wants to try and take orders from them, so to speak. Now, as far as how efficient these chips are going to be, that is the question because Microsoft can make chips. They made a chip with Qualcomm, and we were like, "Oh, this is the beginning of Windows on ARM." And then the chip came out, and the performance came out, and people were like, "Ah, so close." So Microsoft can make these
Yet
chips.
so far.
Yeah, they can make these chips, but they don't perform like the NVIDIA chips. Then it's back to NVIDIA saying, "All right, well, you tried your best, Microsoft." So I don't believe we're going to start seeing these chips until the summer of 2024 is when I think some places are going to be able to start getting access to them. We will have to circle back on how the performances are on these things because again, that's what it comes down to. Not just because Microsoft's making it, they've been doing this. They've been in the lab making chips for a while. Doesn't mean that we've seen any of the raw benefits from it, like an M1 or an M2. Like it's going to take them a while before they can perfect it, and we start to see them hit that like plateau of incrementalization. With that being said, what's our next headline? I think we've only gone through three. We're already 40 minutes in.
Well, I'll say this. I do want to make one comment about what you said that
Yeah, of
crossed
course.
my mind. Folks, a license these days in technology will get you just about anything you want. And I
Yes,
like to your point, I think that's what you're going to see is as long as the original maker of chip A is making money, the people out there that would like to use things similar to chip A can do whatever they want as long as they pay the original maker of chip A, regardless of who that is.
agreed.
And while we're on the topic of CPUs and all that good stuff, if you want to break something, and I hope you don't, Microsoft has said, okay, look, you can now repair your Surface Laptop Studio 2 or your Surface Go 4. They're making the process a little bit easier. The videos, a sample of the videos are up on our website. You can go check those out, but you can download the PDFs, watch the videos. You can buy specific components directly from the Microsoft Store. Good example would be displays, keyboards. I did do a little browse through the store. You can buy a trackpad to go on some of these. Or the Surface Laptop Studio 2's trackpad was in there. Um, Quite a few components you can buy in there, more in there than I thought there would be. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you don't mind playing with a screwdriver. They did partner with iFixit as well. iFixit is a very popular company slash brand in taking apart electronics and repairing. You can get a kit from iFixit that does contain tools for opening your devices. So that is something to keep in mind. But if you're not like me and you want to tinker with your $2,500 Surface Studio because something broke. Instead of dealing with Microsoft warranty, go right ahead. Microsoft will give you that option.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch companies comply to this version of right to repair, because they are producing the components that you can fix stuff with. But the skill set and the accessibility and ease at which you do it are nothing like they
Mm.
used to be. Like, we used to back in the day take apart a ThinkPad with like five, six screws or whatever, and you had access to everything. Everything was plug and play. Like you plugged in the motherboard essentially into this like thin wired piece that would kind of prop out from the whole CPU itself, and then you snap it back into place. Same thing with memory or whatnot. These kind of things were just easy, kind of snap and play. Now, because things are more soldered on, things are the way that they're designed in order to adhere to a level of thinness that we all kind of want but don't really mind. It's a lot harder. Now I'm glad that they're making the components easier to get, to access. As far as people breaking their devices in order to fix them, I'm afraid for that. I feel there are going to be a lot of amateurs going in with screwdrivers and things like that, and then coming out about 3 hours later going, man, I really shouldn't have done that. Like, I have the part, I have the access to fixing it, but somewhere in between that, I missed a spot, and or it wasn't as easy. I should go take it to a repair shop or a professional.
And unfortunately, as you mentioned, somewhere in this process, somewhere, there's going to be a spark and the magic black smoke will be
Yeah,
released.
yeah, it's like the signaling to the Pope, like, oh, you need a new computer. We have a new computer ready and ordered. That's what that black smoke is going to represent
That's
now these
exactly
days.
what, and AI will order that computer for you.
There you go. There you go. As long as you have like an Alexa somewhere or a Google Assistant that can sense, maybe they'll start coming with you know uh, sensors for smoke detection and be like, oh, I smell a new computer. Would you like to order that? Just say yes.
And we will charge that card, and you don't have to do a thing.
No click. We went from one click to no click these days. Uh, I'm going to move on to our next headline, which is Microsoft Loop is now generally available with a host of new features and improvements. And by generally available, it's for commercial customers on the web and mobile platforms. Business customers can access the platform via Microsoft 365, uh, the business versions of E3, E5, Business Standard, and Business Premium licenses. Microsoft has also incorporated, as I mentioned in the headline, several new features and improvements to the platform, including workspace status and work descriptions. They obviously made the announcement during Ignite, which again, most of this news will be from. For those of you who are wondering what some of these features are, we have Microsoft unveiling the workspace status, which currently is only in preview, but obviously preview hopefully means that it'll eventually be available for everybody. And it's designed to provide users with important information regarding upcoming deadlines and status changes. This will provide users with a simple overview, spotlighting urgent matters that require immediate attention. So you'll have kind of I don't know, some sort of identifier at the top, or maybe the left side pane saying, "Hey, you set a deadline for this last week. You're now behind. Your client's waiting for it. You might want to get back on that." Microsoft Loop will also be getting a feature dubbed work descriptions and preview. Per Microsoft's explanation, when in a workspace is created, Loop will intelligently surface files and documents that may be related to the project. What's more, users can use a more descriptive prompt to surface more specific results. This is part of that, I'm assuming, Copilot functionality, AI, system
Hmm.
helping you in the software. Next up, we have Microsoft integrating Power Automate into Microsoft Loop to simplify the tasks and tracking of project management processes. Users can create a new rule in a loop table, which will automatically send out notifications every time a change is made, so you can annoy the hell out of yourself, your clients, your coworkers if you're the overachiever in the group. Finally, Microsoft is making it easier for users to hit the ground running when working on projects. At the end of Teams meeting, a Loop workspace will be created and automatically populated with relevant and crucial documentation and notes shared throughout the entire session. These features will be available in preview towards the end of this year. So, we're in the Thanksgiving week, so don't expect anything probably this week. And I believe you'll have about 2 weeks of Microsoft productivity from the teams, engineers, from the teams in Windows, all that stuff before everyone goes on vacation. And you won't hear from anybody from within Microsoft until about maybe the first week of January, maybe after that. So maybe next week, sometime you'll be able to try these out if you are signed up for the commercial preview stuff.
You know, Loop has come a long way. I remember when you and I started using the first version of it when we were doing the other podcast, and we got in there. We put our first episode in. We thought we were doing pretty well, and we got ready to start the podcast, and there was no notes in there anymore. They just disappeared. They just went away. And
Yeah.
Microsoft has done a lot to add to Loop. I think Loop is a pretty cool addition to the platform of Office. I think there's a definite place for Loop between Loop and OneNote. Um, OneNote has the advantages over Loop and vice versa. So glad to see Loop improving. Hopefully, we see those improvements before the men and women over at the Microsoft campus check out for the holidays.
Yeah, but again, these are, I believe, for commercial stuff. As we mentioned, Microsoft like to work uh, backwards from the consumer or forwards towards the consumer. They'll give it to businesses first, all the cool stuff, and then they'll let it trickle back down to consumers. So, as a consumer, if you're waiting for this kind of stuff, you probably won't get it until January, if I had to guess. But I am not a soothsayer, so take it with a grain of salt. The next thing we have up is Microsoft Mesh and immersive spaces in Teams. Again, it will be generally available early next year, probably sometime January 2024. Microsoft is holding, uh, or sorry, the company has announced that it'll ship immersive spaces in Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Mesh sometime in January 2024, with the hosted a couple of the features to immersive spaces experience, including 3D environments and interactive games. Uh, there's also going to be a mesh editor that'll be coming. An event organizer will also be available for users to customize their immersive experiences. You will need Teams Premium in order to start using this kind of stuff and in order to customize immersive spaces in Mesh. I don't remember if you guys or if any of you remember what Teams immersive team spaces or Microsoft Mesh was. I believe this is before the advent of the metaverse showed up. This is like Microsoft kind of wading into those waters before we got into the full on, we're going to do metaverse stuff. Do you remember any of that?
I don't remember much of that. I'm gonna be honest. I saw something a couple weeks ago that only 19,000 companies, or there were only 19,000 subscriptions to Microsoft Teams Premium. So, Microsoft Teams Premium is not really seeming to be something that companies have really bought into. But then again, it goes back to the whole Copilot AI thing. If they say, look, if you want the full thing, you've got to get Teams Premium to do it. Then, of course, they're going to wrap in Mesh and the immersive spaces. But I don't remember a whole lot about. I remember Mesh being mentioned. I remember the immersive spaces being mentioned, but I don't remember a whole lot about each one. I don't.
Yeah, it was kind of a place for people to interact in a virtual space. And teams that kind of started this. We wrote about this back on Microsoft about, I would say, 3 years ago or so. And like I said, it preceded the metaverse, and I believe the conversation was swallowed up by Microsoft saying, "Hey, we're going all in the metaverse." But whenever they did it in tandem by saying Microsoft Mesh and immersive spaces. Those terms are referenced together. It's just that the metaverse had a whole slew of marketing behind it, so it kind of just gobbled up the whole conversation. But these are still things available. So if you are someone who is looking to host a metaverse like experience without having necessarily the headset, You just want to kind of hang out with some people and walk around in avatars. I believe these ones don't have legs either, but you could do that as well. You can do your own Microsoft version of this. Like I said, there'll be 3D environments with a wide array of options to select from based on the purpose or the needs for your meeting. So, you could have concert halls. You could have, I believe they even have a virtual meeting room that you can walk around. So you can be on the sitting across from, you and I could be sitting across from each other from the same virtual table without legs and talking about something and pointing to a whiteboard at the other end of it. I believe those are some of the images I had seen about that. Let me see if I can actually find some because, we're not on a timetable just yet. But see if I can find the things that I remember seeing as far as the images are concerned, because that
Yeah,
was
find those and
interesting.
give us a little reminder here because I know I
Yeah,
certainly need one, and I'm sure our audience needs a little something.
yeah. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here is, I believe. Okay, so this is kind of like the what do you call it? The This is what you get from like those before and afters kind of things, or like the nailed it situations
Okay,
where you have. Hold on a second. We'll pull it up. Let me go. Um, I got to share the other window. We are. Here we go. So here we go.
thanks for being patient with us, folks. We're
Yes.
part-time producers here.
So this was the idea. This was supposed to be the dream goal of like what we would see, especially if you had a HoloLens headset on. And then I believe this is what they pared it down to for without the headset.
Okay, yep, I do remember seeing that. Yep.
Okay, right? So that is Microsoft's uh, mesh net. There goes the virtual table I was telling you about and everything. So yeah, so that is still a thing, and they're still working on it. They're still refining it. So if you are one of the 19,000 businesses out there still using it, new stuff's coming your way. So congratulations.
And to think those avatars started like that, something similar with the Xbox 360, where you could customize your own avatar with the Microsoft Connect camera, if you remember, because you stood in front of the camera, and
Yes.
it would at least attempt to draw what it saw, and you could make your own avatar. So
Well, that was, I believe, that's what a lot of us in the industry thought was going to happen, was that because Microsoft also had this whole rebranding and whole new platform. Remember for avatars that was supposed to be a little bit more lifelike or at least more
mm,
representative. And we thought that you'd take that experience. Here we go. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. So here's I believe, if we remember what the old ones look like.
yep, yes.
Right. So we thought we'd be using those in a version of it, and then they gave us this promise of this one, and I still have mine. I have mine from it's on my Xbox or whatever, and we thought easily you port these over to your Teams thing. You've already taken the time to craft this character or this version, this representation of yourself, and then you just take it over to the Teams mesh in that environment. That was, I thought, the natural progression, but it seems like there was a bit of disconnect somewhere, at least as of right now. We don't know if they're going to, reinstate this idea of taking those avatars over or how you create them in Teams. But I believe the Teams avatars are different than the Xbox ones. They might as well just take that same platform that they invested time into and let you move it over.
All right, folks, real quick, are you guys thinking the same thing I'm thinking? I'm thinking Kareem needs to bring his avatar next week for next week's podcast. He needs to turn on his old Xbox and show us his old avatar next week.
I'll bring mine, but that means you'll either have to do it the same week or the week following. Like we're going to see yours as
All
well.
right, I'll do
And if you
that.
don't have one made, you got to go make one.
I'll make one.
All right. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us for the next 2 weeks. You'll get to see some funny avatars at least. Our
The
next
one that I had
yeah.
may or may not included the Guitar Hero guitar. If that tells you how old that
Ooh,
is.
please. Oh, that's right. I will show you because I think I have a screenshot saved of the old one and the new one. So I will show you my evolution of Xbox avatars next week. Just got to remind me. The next headline, like I said, we have is another big thing that kind of came out, and I say big, but it's only big in name. It is Microsoft changing Bing Chat to Copilot. Microsoft has gone full Copilot. They've gone Copilot crazy. They're like, I don't know what's his name from Exhibit from Pimp My Ride, where it's like, hey, we heard you wanted
Uh-huh.
this to hear this, so we gave you this. They've made Copilot everything. Copilot is now the official assistant name to that whole platform. Bing Chat uh, presumably wasn't doing as well as they thought it would. I believe that there were two ideas that were going on here, and I want to credit because this isn't, unfortunately, isn't an original thought, but this is something I can build upon. The folks over at The Verge, I listened to their podcast this weekend, and they were talking about the idea that the pivot from Bing Chat to Microsoft Copilot was ingenious. And for those of us who are Bing fans, it may not seem that way, but the reality is that Bing isn't very good as far as regarding competing with Google. I get a lot of use out of it, but I can understand why people prefer Google search over it. And getting away from Bing Chat allows Copilot to succeed. What are your thoughts on that?
It's its own brand. I think there was another very popular podcaster that has brought this up, and I agreed with everything they said, and I'm going to kind of stick with that rhetoric. The name Bing does not have the greatest following unless you're a Microsoft enthusiast. And I think, and even if you're a Microsoft enthusiast, we were just talking about it before the podcast. I still go to Google.com, and I still use Chrome. Love me or hate me, that's what I do. But I think moving it away from the Bing name is probably the smartest thing Microsoft could do. Give it its own chance, its own opportunity, without it being tied to anything else. I mean, we kind of saw what happened when they tried to tie Cortana and Bing together. One of those two is no longer with us. And I feel like if they had gone to Bing Chat for the legions of people that are always going to use Google, the first response would have been, well, I'm not going to use Bing, so I'm not going to try out this new Bing Chat thing. And they would have missed the whole experience. And maybe or maybe not, AI doesn't move forward. But I think standing on its own 2 feet as Copilot or even Bard for Google and whatever Amazon and some of the others come up with when they introduce theirs, and Apple with theirs as well. I think these AI products have got to stand on their own 2 feet, regardless of who's doing them. If you tie them to bad, bad juice, if you will, it doesn't go well. And I don't think when Bing Chat first came out, it got everything it deserved because you saw, well, I'm not using Bing. That was the attitude of some people. I'm not going to Bing.com. And I think now it would be interesting to see what the numbers would be if it was Bing on the taskbar or Bing Chat on the taskbar versus Copilot to see what the difference is with curiosity. Curiosity. What is Copilot? Somebody clicks it, somebody gets their Thanksgiving recipe or some help with their Thanksgiving travel. They come back and they use that sucker again. They see Bing, they may not even click it.
Well, and I think, like I said, to the folks that believe it's David Pierce and Neelai Patel and forget the name of the other co-host on there. She was, they make the astute observation that there were two things wrong with that. Obviously, Bing, like you just really thoroughly covered, no one really wants to use that branding, and the chat part of it. People were expecting, and this is, for better or for worse, this is where they got their first initial push from public awareness to chat with these things the same way we chatted with Cortana, and that didn't work out. It didn't work out for Siri. It doesn't really work out for Google Assistant. It it doesn't. It's not. It didn't work out for Bixby. That is now dead on the phone. People don't necessarily want to chat with these assistants. They want to give them directions to make their life easier. They're not looking for a friend. They're looking for someone to help with their work life or do a specific task much faster than they can do it themselves. And the idea that Bing Chat, the service you don't want to use, wants to chat with you, was a double negative in Microsoft's favor. It was funny when everyone started chatting with it to begin with, and they had all these crazy stories about what the chatbot was doing or saying or writing up. But Microsoft figured out that it's executable. It's something that will help work produce or help you produce you know uh, worksheets much faster. It'll help you produce PowerPoints much faster. It'll help you create scripts and give you ideas on how to write certain things much faster. Like it is a task oriented thing, and to call it Copilot moves away from the chat idea. Like, oh, this will be your next Cortana. No, this won't be your next Cortana. This will be something in your Office 365 portfolio that will do something for you. And I believe that's where Microsoft figured this out, and they figured it out early enough to make it worthwhile. Tying it to Bing Chat means again you're tying it to that search engine that is second tier to Google, which Google is you're fighting an uphill battle already with that. Now you can say, hey, we're not looking to be a search engine, which again it can do. It can gather and give you ingestible versions of information from the internet, which is great. But Microsoft saying our version of it is going to help you work faster, do things more. And for unfortunately for businesses, if you're the executive level and you're thinking of reducing your staff, because again that's always your highest cost, this is going to help you do that, or help reduce their hours, so to speak, or help if I'm looking at it optimistically, taking uh, Brian or Sarah from HR who is only processing certain things manually, giving them the tools to process it automatically so you can task them with something else instead. They're not spending 8 hours processing uh, um, orders to vacation orders and things like that. There is a system that'll be in place now thanks to Copilot that'll process it for them, and they can move on to something else that you can task them with and be more efficient. So that's optimistically. Unfortunately, pessimistically, realistically speaking, maybe you get rid of those two people because you have an automated system now. That's
That's where I was.
that's where AI
That's
or
that's
Copilot
what I
makes
don't.
a big impact.
That there's going to be. How do I want to say this without wasting too much of our time? There's going to be workplace changes as AI advances, as AI expands, as AI manipulates or morphs into new things. There's going to be people that lose jobs. There's already been people that have lost jobs to AI, I'm sure. But that's kind of the downside of it. If companies can get devices, machines to make money for them versus having people, that's what's going to happen in most cases. And that's just this crazy world we live in. I know in other countries, you can now go into your McDonald's and there's just somebody in there manning the computer screens, and you no longer have your folks back there making your food and, making sure you get your order. Now imagine if AI starts to turn some corporate jobs that way, where you don't need your HR lady to process your payroll anymore. Your AI does it for you, for example. You don't need your auditor to do as much work. Your AI does it for you, for example. So, as great as it is, the more it advances, we're going to see job loss. But just like when we went from pencils to keyboards and from keyboards to online, where you no longer put things in the mailbox, you didn't mail in your power bill, you didn't mail in your insurance bills. You know, people were lost there too because if you weren't mailing them in, there were processors not needed to process that paperwork. So we're going to see another job market change to see where this leads us to.
Yeah, I mean, this is to kind of. I mean, I don't want to segue because I still have something important to do, but I believe OpenAI had their Dev Day or whatever they called it, where they talked about building
Hmm.
specific, having a marketplace to build specific AI apps. And I believe this will be something like you said. This will be a place where a business can go and pick up a P&L budgeting AI app versus having to hire a full person and give them insurance and an office, things like that. They'll say, all right, I'll take the AI app that can process P&L and budgets and invoices and everything like that. So there'll be someone out there who has designed that. And OpenAI had said that you'll be able to design an app without any code. So if you are someone who knows those things, you know how to do P&L, you know how to do budget, you know how to process claims and things like that in HR, there's still an opportunity for you to pivot and perhaps make yourself an app to make money where you don't have to go in an office anymore. You don't have to be hounded by your boss about meeting certain deadlines. You can work from home. You can create that app, maintain that app, and be on the beach somewhere in Greece or France and have yourself a new life. Go explore making music, go explore writing, go explore traveling and other things. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, again, we're being realistic. There will be some downsides to a lot of this, but to your point, there is a chance and opportunity to transition for some people and to make their lives somewhat better, even in the face of negativity and adversity, so to speak. My last story before we get to our biggest thing and kind of cut it through my segue was Microsoft Planner gains to do in project integrations. We haven't seen what this is going to look like, but this is basically they're going to be meshed into one app. For those of you who use Microsoft Planner or Microsoft To Do or Microsoft Project, uh, there's going to be a new planner experience that combines all three of these. It's supposed to come out in the spring of 2024, I believe. Yeah, like I said, it's going to combine the three things into one. It's supposed to use the power of AI as well, because it's Microsoft and Copilot's everywhere. And there will be a Copilot version of it. And again, I think to our point of Copilot being key phrase, I think at some point it'll be just synonymous with did you use Copilot versus did you use the Microsoft Planner Copilot? So it'll be a verb to be like, hey, I use Copilot
Hmm.
for this thing. Go use the Copilot for that. Go try Copilot for this thing or whatever. But anyway, if you use one of those three things, it will eventually be its own app. I'm looking forward to because I do use Planner a lot. I don't use uh, projects as often, so I don't know what kind of new functionality that'll bring. But to be able to necessarily put into your to do and have it become a card in your planner is also pretty nice. And the way that it integrates with your email currently, the way Planner does now, or To Do does, that'll be even better. So if like us, we get emails from companies all the time about embargoes or hardware we need to review, things like that. I need to find a way in there to make that a to do immediately when someone's saying, hey, we're going to be giving you this device. There's an embargo on it. It's due this day. I can, take that email, turn it into a to do, which will then go into Planner, which will then I can then, be held accountable for if I work in a business, things like that. Uh, so again, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about yourself.
I've got a million things, like you mentioned, I've got a million things going on my desktop in any given day. There's monitors over here, there's monitors over here, there's monitors back here. Anything that can process data that comes into me via chat, Slack, Teams, email, OneNote, Loop, any of it, I'm all for it because we're all multitasking. I mean, like, you take you and I, for example. This is not what we do all day, every day. We don't get on, these and do these podcasts every day. I wish we did. I wish we had the income to where all we had to do was get up here and talk to you guys, but we're not that fortunate yet. So we've got to multitask what pays the bills with this. So while we're doing this podcast, if there's something out there that is managing what is coming in through our notifications and our other funnels, and when we disconnect from the podcast here, we can see that neatly arranged and everything's happy and cool, that would be the way I would prefer it.
I mean, I like to say this because I'm a comic fan. But for those of you who are comic fans as well, and know anything about Batman, I would say his superpower, because everyone always says it's his money or his ability to like, do hand-to-hand combat or his endurance. His superpower is being organized, and I assume he has software specialized for stuff like this. You see him in the Batcave, and he's got 12 to 25 monitors all up, monitoring all of the crimes going through Gotham and all the notifications that he gets about crimes and things going on at once. To be able to sort that out, organize it, and act upon any of those one of 25 things going on at once is his true ability. And I think maybe he's using software, like I said, that that we're talking about now. He's been living in the future. He's been using a copilot. I remember back in the day, he had a character named Oracle. I believe it was Batgirl after she got injured, and she would help organize all this stuff. So he had his own physical version of Copilot. He's also been using software for years that has kept him above things. So it's not the money, it's not the fighting, it's being organized. That is his true thing. You watch all the other heroes, they're not as organized, they're not as efficient as Batman. Superman does one task at a time. He can do it very quickly, but one at a time. Batman, truly all over the place.
Well, I'll agree with that and say that if there were multiple cameras on this desk right now, I would show you guys a good
Yeah.
picture of what is unorganized and what does need co-pilot, AI assistant, or something to come organize it.
There you go. Speaking of superpowers and supermen, our last story is obviously about the biggest news of the weekend, which is OpenAI.
Wh-
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
which headline are we going with? The first one, the fifth one, or the eighth one?
Let's start in order, shall we? This is with OpenAI coming out on Friday, saying our CEO is no longer with the company, and we do not have faith in it. We don't have faith in him. And to paraphrase it, we don't trust him. That was Friday. I believe Saturday was relatively calm. Sunday is when the news really took off, and we started getting multiple different headlines about different things that are all happening at once. It seemed like. I believe one of the headlines was that they were discussing him coming back. We're talking about Sam Altman, the CEO and co-founder of OpenAI, uh, having been let go Friday. And I believe he gave a tweet out that day saying like, "Hey, I love what the company's been doing. I look forward to my future and doing some other things or whatever." Didn't really disparage or say anything negative about the company. I believe the same day that he was let go, the other co-founder had left the company as well. And so those two were out. There were also several people, I want to say five or six other people that were high up that were also getting ready to leave as well. Then, like I said, Saturday, not much was mentioned. Sunday, we started getting headlines of the what did they call the board, which should let him go, rethinking what they had said and maybe perhaps hiring him back. Now, mind you, the board said that they didn't trust him. Again, paraphrasing, and that they were moving on into other things. That their visions weren't aligned, and this is presumably and that the catalyst and this is from people who are knowledgeable about the whole weekend. We're saying that the catalyst had been the Dev Day, and presumably uh, OpenAI was the board was looking for more nonprofit direction, while Sam obviously was looking for profit. He was talking about building marketplaces and sharing, potentially sharing revenue and making money, making money. And he made a lot of money for the company, over 90 billion in value, by partnering up with Microsoft and doing the things that they did. But perhaps the board was saying, hey, we're moving too fast, too quickly out of the nonprofit sector where we want to do good things before we start, cornering ourselves into a financial corner, so to speak. Then come Monday, and we get the headlines that he had been hired as a CEO in a specific Microsoft division that was going to be working with AI. He's basically going to essentially what we could presume was restart OpenAI, but within Microsoft. And upon that news, 700 of the 771 employees at OpenAI had signed on to a letter saying, if you do not hire him back from Microsoft, we're going to leave. And 500 of us, if we can, will move over to Microsoft. That was on Monday. Come today, we get headlines of Satya Nadella going, "Oh, that's great. That's news to me. I had no idea, but hey, we welcome it. That's where I believe we're at right now, where he's still trying to get back onto OpenAI as CEO, but still has an official, unofficial position as CEO of a particular AI business within Microsoft. Take it from there.
I think it's a backdoor move. I'm going to call that what it is. I think, yes, I
Is
do
Steve
think he
Neal
ends up. Yeah, I do think he'll end up being back at OpenAI, but I think for all intents and purposes, OpenAI will exist under the Microsoft umbrella.
So
I,
we will. You heard it here, folks. We're calling it the Nokia Shuffle. This is what's happening. The burning platform dance.
I think they're on OpenAI. Now let's say this: OpenAI has they do have a leader. I believe he was the third choice from what I read. So he's got to not be feeling too positive about his position right now if he was the third choice.
And he's interim, I
And
believe, at that.
yeah, and he's interim at that. I think eventually this AI department, whatever you would like to call it in Microsoft, continues to form. Sam will be the head or somewhere near of that department, and Sam will bring his people to that department and follow the money. Because, as you mentioned, what upset the board possibly and got him ousted was he was ready to pursue making some money. And he may go back to OpenAI. It may change names. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I saw on another podcast this morning where they believe that the news would break before the week is out. I guess that could be Sunday. Um, of what's going to happen here. And I believe he's going to physically remain at Microsoft. Now, what role, what title? I don't know, but I think that's going to have a connection to OpenAI. I don't think you can shake OpenAI the way it's been shook in the past 4 days. And everybody go back to their offices, and Sam go back to the CEO office. And okay, guys, company meeting. We're just gonna, go back to the way things were last week. I don't foresee that happening. I think there's going to have to be a change here because if you're Sam or anybody else on the board, you're looking at each other going, well, we did this one time. What stops us from doing it again? Where's the security at in what we're doing here? I think the security of OpenAI returning back to what it was just a week ago, that's gone. I think Microsoft absorbs it in some form or absorbs the people and possibly the name comes with it. Does Microsoft really care if the name comes with it? I don't know, but I don't think it's going to go back to the way things were.
No, if I had to guess, I'm assuming Sam had already started working on other projects and other things. I don't think OpenAI was his final destination or his final landing resting spot. I believe he had also been rumored to be working on creating chips for OpenAI specifically.
Hmm.
To your point, I do believe he'll take on another business at Microsoft. It'll be working in AI. I don't believe it'll be competitive with OpenAI. I don't know if Microsoft wants to double pay because the contracts are probably with OpenAI as a brand and as a company, which would stay. What was rumored to have happened over the weekend was that Microsoft had also wanted Sam to be hired back. Obviously, they
Yeah,
like
I did
working with
see
him.
that as well.
It also maintains the stability of the company. I believe on Friday, Microsoft was hit with, its stock was hit because investors were worried about the shakeup. With Sam being out and he being the main, you know, conduit to OpenAI, where was Microsoft left with this? Microsoft, Satya Nadella had been on stage with Sam earlier that week for their Dev Day.
Hmm.
It was weird that Microsoft had no idea about this, no idea, so to speak. We don't know how much they knew. The other thing that came out in the news was that Microsoft wants a spot on the board. Now they can't legally do a one for one where they put a person on the board, but they would like OpenAI to create a position where they can have a bit of oversight. They can have someone in a specialized position as a I don't know, as a purveyor or a non voting entity that could let them be abreast in situations like this. So again, they're not blindsided, and I believe that is also some of the terms that Sam had came back with on Sunday, saying like, "Hey, if I get rehired, I want the board redone." To your point, I don't want this to happen again. I don't want to be in a position like this again. And the board was like, "No, we're not going to change that." Obviously, they didn't want to. They don't want to get ousted as well. But I think if they can find terms uh, amicable for everybody, there's going to be a shakeup of the board, the way that they vote out people going forward, and I believe Microsoft's going to want someone or some position that they will have insight into board's activities. Again, they may not have a specific person, but maybe they can get uh, uh, an arbiter of some sort uh, where they join with a bunch of other people who have already invested in OpenAI, and they have that open position. So they're amongst a bunch of other investors. They can see into the board. They don't have voting rights per se. They can't make any final decisions, but they can have someone that comes back saying, "Hey, the board is voting on this next move or ousting this person," and they can be like, "Hey, we can't tell you what to do, but we would really heavily suggest this, and we can make so with our investment, so to speak, going forward." Because again, like we said, there's $10.1 billion, I believe, already invested over the next 5 or 6 years with OpenAI. And again, I think that's with the brand. But they could get Sam for really super cheap. They don't have to buy the company. And if up to 500 people are willing to leave with him, and these are all people who work with him in order to make OpenAI, imagine what they could do with Microsoft's unlimited resources within the company, specializing in things that Microsoft specifically wants to do, and isn't burdened with the nonprofit version of OpenAI. So they can still maintain OpenAI. That's what everyone knows. That's a brand that people are investing in. They still have 49% shares in that, I believe, overwhelmingly. OpenAI still owes Microsoft. The way that it works is that Microsoft gets a revenue share, and so they can pay back that 10.5 or $10.1 billion investment. So they're still making money. People are still going to them. Anybody who's worked or did anything with a dev day, they're all planning on making money off of that. Microsoft will make money off of that as well. And they could be working simultaneously on building their own chat GPT-esque model much faster within their own company and rely less on OpenAI in the near future, or I guess the distant future. So 5, 6 years from now, that those investments start to dry up, so to speak, and Microsoft should pivot into whatever it is they need as far as the customer demand is at that time.
Whatever happens here, I think you're going to see AI completely and totally pick up the pace of development here because wherever Sam lays his head, whether it's back at OpenAI, I'm in totally agreement with what Kareem is saying. I think Microsoft is going to almost request or heavily influence as much as possible to say, hey, we want a seat, a position, a role, something to supervise this so it doesn't happen again. I think that's the thing. If Sam goes back and goes back to an OpenAI Microsoft and says, look, this is why we give you the $10 billion. We want to do this to make sure that our investment is protected and everybody else's investment is protected. So this is what we're going to do. Now, if you see Sam and parts of the OpenAI team absorbed into Microsoft where there are bottomless pockets for AI right now, because I saw another podcaster say, well, if Sam and the rest of the board members are available, Microsoft would spend that money faster than they could write the check. I totally agree with that. And if that was to happen, I think you would see AI advance probably It's already going at a rapid pace, but I think you would definitely see, might get a little crazy about how quick this would be coming out.
I agree. We will stay tuned on this. Again, the stories are developing as we speak, so
Mm,
check back in
yes.
with us, and we might have a whole new story about OpenAI completely collapsing and Microsoft pivoting to an entire different technology that none of us had seen it coming. With that being said, we're going to wrap up this first live stream. This would be the section where we'd open up the comments, but we're still building an audience. We hope that you guys or anybody who's watching this will come back next week and we can start to have comments. We'll start to see if we can maybe scrape some from the internet on our socials, which are linked down below. You can check those out and go talk to us on Twitter, formerly known as X, or Cream Anderson at Threads. I don't know about yourself.
I will be David PAJ1978 over on I'm still calling it Twitter. It's going to be
Hey, you
Twitter
said
for
you'd get a
me.
Threads account.
I did. I need to do that, and I need that reminder. I tell you what, can you use AI and make sure that I get reminded to make that Threads account? Can you do that for me?
I'm going to go old school with my reminder. Just tie it to a rock and throw it at your window.
Okay, that'll work. The
Thank you,
1980s
everybody.
form of
Yeah,
AI.
yeah, the one that broke your windows, your physical windows, not your computer. Thank you, everybody, for
Hey,
hanging
but
out with us and trying this
when that
out.
rock did hit, we were more intelligent. I'll say that.
I mean, you immediately got on it. And hopefully we'll try this without the logo at the top. We'll have to pay for the software. We just want to try it for free, but we like the format. We like talking
Yes.
to you guys. We're back. So and again, if you want to read about any of these things in detail, go check out our website at MicrosoftUnboxed.com. That's where a lot of these news headlines will be. With that being said, have a good week. Enjoy your Thanksgiving if you're here in the States.
Happy holidays, folks. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.